Welcome to the Livin'Sky Podcast, a show about raising connected, resilient kids in a world that often forgets what they need most. I'm Lena Livin'Sky, a pediatric speech-language pathologist, holistic feeding specialist, and a mom, here to help you understand your child's body, behavior, and biology in a whole new way. Each episode brings you simple, practical tools to support healthy eating, development, and family connection without the overwhelm. Thanks for listening. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Livin'Sky Podcast. I'm your host, Lena Livin'Sky, a speech-language pathologist, feeding specialist, gut health enthusiast, an emerging expert in pediatric sleep and development, and most of all, a mom. Join us as we delve into topics such as feeding, nutrition, gut health, sleep, breathing, circadian rhythm, motherhood, and more during a mix of solo episodes and discussions with expert guests. Each episode offers practical advice, evidence-based guidance, and heartfelt stories to help you raise healthy, happy, and resilient children. Whether you're a first-time parent or an experienced caregiver, the Livin'Sky Podcast is designed for you. I cannot wait to get started, and also, I have a toddler, so I gotta get going. This is the Livin'Sky Podcast. Welcome to the Livin'Sky Podcast. I'm your host, Lena Livin'Sky, and I'm so excited to have you here because we're going to talk about something that's really, really important, and that is the gut-brain connection and your microbiome health, or really the intro to microbiome health, because there's just so much to talk about. I've recently been reading the book by the brilliant Dr. Elisa Song called Healthy Kids, Happy Kids, which really talks about how developing your gut microbiome resilience as a child can lead to a healthy and happy life. Because as we know, a lot of disease is born in the gut, if not most of it. We also know that blood sugar imbalances also cause a lot of disease, which develops later in life. But the microbiome really, really holds the key to our health. Which is why I'm finding this book so mind-blowing, because not only am I learning a wealth of information about children's health, which is something that I'm so passionate about as a pediatric speech-language pathologist and somebody who's learning about child development, and I'm so passionate about it because I want to really help kids to lead a really healthy life. Because as an SLP, I've been working with children who have a lot of neurological diseases, right? I've been working with kids who have language delays and speech delays and feeding issues. And really what I've been seeing is that our kids are just sicker and sicker. And I'm so excited about having this book because I want to learn from not only the perspective of therapy, which is so important for our children who need it, but also from the health outlook of how we can actually help our children develop a healthy microbiome so that perhaps they're not going to have to deal with a lot of these diseases that we're seeing nowadays. Things like eczema, autism, ADHD, depression, even picky eating, sensory issues, sensory processing disorder. That's a new thing that really wasn't around 20 years ago. And we're seeing more and more of it because of the way our world is just making us sicker. So I want to be part of the solution, not only from the therapeutic perspective, but really from the health perspective to help our children develop into healthy adults. Right? There's actually a study that Dr. Song mentions a lot. I've been listening to her podcast, and she mentions this a lot about, I think it was in the New England Journal of Medicine. And I'm not 100% sure about that, so I have to look it up. But in 2005, there was a study in this medical journal that talks about how our kids are now projected not to live as long as we are living because they've just been riddled with so many diseases growing up. They're just sicker and sicker. So they're projected to actually have shorter lifespans than us. And I mean, that's just mind-blowing to me, right? Talk about the pandemic that we just went through, which really opened our eyes to a lot of issues in the world and the state of our health. But why are we not ringing the alarms about this, right? Our kids are sicker and sicker, and there's really not much that we're doing to help them. And this is why I'm so passionate about this, because the thing is that there are so many things that we can do to help them. Even though we live in a very toxic world, I mean, we're exposed to about 700,000 different toxins every single day. But if we have a resilient gut microbiome, we're not going to be affected by those as much as somebody who doesn't have a resilient gut microbiome, meaning they're dealing with a leaky gut or gut dysbiosis, or they have yeast overgrowth in their gut, or they have fungal overgrowth or parasites. All of these things cause us to not be as well prepared to deal with all the toxins and everything else we have to deal with, all the stresses of everyday life, because 80% of our immune system is in the gut. So this is why it's so important. I want to talk about this today because as parents, as new parents, or as experienced parents, we always look for answers of how to make our children thrive and how to make them healthier and how to make them just be the best version of themselves that they can possibly be. And sometimes it's hard to find these answers, especially for parents who already are dealing with children who are sick. And 1 in 2 children has a chronic disease right now. And Dr. Song talks about how even more than that, so more than 50% of kids have some kind of chronic disease symptoms, even if they're not diagnosed yet, right? So maybe their skin is not as smooth and soft as it should be. Maybe they have a little rash here and there. Maybe there is something going on with their gut. Maybe they're constipated or things like that, but they're not necessarily diagnosed with something that's like a chronic disease yet, but perhaps they're moving in that direction. So we're dealing with this a lot. And unfortunately, we're not getting answers about it from conventional medicine doctors, from our typical pediatricians. They're very well meaning, but unfortunately, the way the system has been set up, we've been taught that when a child is sick, they're prescribed an antibiotic. And studies have shown that actually 70% of antibiotics are overprescribed to things that actually don't need to be treated with antibiotics. That's 70%, which is mind blowing to me because antibiotics just wreck our gut, right? And as we know, 80% of our immune system lies in our gut. So when we're destroying all the good bacteria, all the probiotics that we need in our gut, we're not doing ourselves any favors and our children any favors, because that just means if we're not restoring their gut balance, if we're not rebalancing these bacteria in their gut, they're just going to get sicker from here and different things can develop, right? Because if we have a leaky gut, there's a leaky gut barrier that's going to let in the bad things, and that's going to let in the bad things into our bloodstream. And we don't want that, right? So we don't want any extra parabens and viruses and parasites making it into our bloodstream, because that's really how we get sick. So there's a lot to talk about here, but let's take it back a little bit to the first 1,000 days of life. So really from conception to the second birthday, but as I've been learning, this really goes until about like 5 years of age for a child, where this is a period of critical window of opportunity where the foundation for lifelong health is laid, right? So during this time, the gut microbiome undergoes significant growth, and it's heavily influenced by things like diet, environment, and even mode of delivery at birth, right? So how they were born. Were they born through the vaginal canal? Were they both born via C-section? All these things really influence the health of our babies. Other things to consider is, are they being breastfed? Are they being formula fed? Are they being exposed to a lot of toxins in the home, right? So it's a really critical period to where we can help our children shape a healthy microbiome. The one thing I do want to note here, though, is that we are resilient, and no matter what happened, whether your child was given antibiotics, whether your child was giving pain medications, which also wreck their gut, such as ibuprofen, which studies are showing that it can have similar effects as an antibiotic on the gut on gut health, which is really alarming. Um, Maybe they've been having a very poor diet because, as we know, our picky eaters, maybe they didn't want to eat vegetables or healthy meats or good fruits. Maybe they're on a very processed diet. But you know what? It's never too late to get started, to make a change, and to start rebuilding their gut health. You know, I'm a huge believer that light is one of the most powerful medicines for our kids and for us. That's why I love Bond Charge. Their blue light blocking glasses, red light therapy devices, and many other products are designed to support your circadian rhythm and help your family sleep and feel better naturally. In our modern world of screens and artificial light, these small shifts make a big difference. Calmer evenings, deep sleep, better focus, and happier moods. I use Bond Charge products every single day, and even my son has his own pair of blue light blocking glasses for evening story time. You can check out all their products at bondcharge.com and use code LENAL to save 15% off your purchase. But the first so-called 1,000 days of life are really important. And what's interesting, what I've learned also, is that at first, children are born with not very diverse gut bacteria in their microbiome. They actually are born mostly with bifidobacteria, and that's really what makes up most of human breast milk as well. Which is why it's so great to breastfeed if you're able to, because we're able to pass on that bifidobacteria to the baby. But that's really mostly what's there, um, which is incredible, because then you think, in order to have a healthy microbiome, we have learned to have like very diverse bacteria in our gut, good bacteria in our gut, because that's what studies have shown in adults, that adult microbiomes have a lot of thousands and thousands of diverse bacteria in their gut. And so for a child, a baby, to be born with just really one type is so interesting. And it just opens up a window of opportunity to really feed them the right things. So as their gut diversifies, we're able to help them develop the right bacteria. So that's why it's so important in the first few years of life to make sure we're helping our children shape the right type of bacteria in their gut so that they develop to be resilient and ready for what is nowadays really, unfortunately, a very toxic world that we live in, right? Because we're constantly bombarded with things like glyphosate in our food and our earth, EMFs from Wi-Fi and whatnot. These are all very heavy toxic loads that we need to deal with every day. There is fragrance in our products. There's processed chemicals in our foods. There's just constantly so many things. Our water is not really great. There's a lot of things in our water that should be filtered out. And unfortunately, that's not happening unless we're very diligent about it, right? There's so many things that we need to work on in order to help our children thrive. This is not something that we had to deal with 50 years ago, but unfortunately, it's something that we have to deal with now. So one thing I didn't mention is what is the actual gut-brain connection? So it's this intricate link between our gut or digestive system and our brain. So our gut isn't just like a simple tube for digesting food. It's a complex ecosystem teeming with trillions of microorganisms collectively known as the gut microbiome. And these microbes play a crucial role in not only our digestion, but also in our overall health, including our brain function and development. And what's incredible is that 80% of our immune health actually lays in our gut, right? So we're really learning a lot about the gut and how it's our second brain. A lot of our emotions are actually processed in the gut, right? We hear this advice often that go with your gut, listen to your gut. because a lot of our intuition lays in our gut. There's just a lot that we really don't know, but our gut and our microbiome are really one of the biggest keys to health that we possess right now. So that's why it's so important to work on the microbiome health for our children. So what happens when our microbiome is disrupted, right? So that's when leaky gut develops or gut dysbiosis. And these two conditions can throw the gut brain connection off kilter, right? Especially in children. So leaky gut is also known as increased intestinal permeability. So that's when the lining of the intestine becomes compromised and it allows toxins and undigested food particles to leak into the bloodstream, triggering inflammation and immune response. Now, gut dysbiosis, on the other hand, refers to an imbalance in the gut microbiome where harmful bacteria outnumber the beneficial ones. So, this imbalance can lead to a host of health issues, which includes digestive disorders, allergies, and even neurological conditions like autism spectrum disorder and eczema. So, that's really scary, right? But the good thing is that as we work on the health of our microbiome, we can improve these conditions, greatly improve these conditions, which is incredible. And I love hearing this and I love learning about this because I have worked with parents of children on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum disorder for years and years since I started my career as a speech pathologist 12 years ago. And sometimes when you get this diagnosis, you may feel like it's kind of an end of it all kind of thing, that your child will always deal with these issues that they're presenting you with right now because there's really nothing they can do except for therapy. And that is kind of the old school of thought, right? Because as we know, gut microbiome imbalances can greatly affect conditions like the autism spectrum disorder. We do know that some of the autism spectrum disorder is genetic, but actually not much. Not many children who are diagnosed with it actually have predispositions to autism spectrum disorder. What's interesting is that a lot of children on the spectrum are found to have a lot of toxicity, a lot of toxins in their bloodstream, and just a lot of toxic poisoning of their gut. So these are the things that cause gut microbiome imbalances. So this is very interesting to think about as parents of children that are neurodiverse. So how can we nurture a healthy gut-brain connection in our children? I'm going to talk about it very briefly right now. This is a very big topic. So this is only an introduction, but I can talk about a few things that we can do. And later on, I'm going to record a full episode on this. So how can we nurture a healthy gut-brain connection and restore our microbiome diversity? Well, it starts with supporting the gut health through proper nutrition, right? So for our babies, if we can breastfeed, that's incredible. There's different things to consider with breastfeeding as well, because we got to think about the microbiome health of the mother, right? Are we passing on only the good bacteria? Are we also passing on toxicity? Unfortunately, in today's world, that's going to happen as well. So our breast milk is not as good as it was 50 years ago, unfortunately. But it's still great for microbiome diversity and really working on supporting that bifidobacteria for infants, which is the first really good gut bacteria that makes up the microbiome of a baby. So that's one way to support it if you can. Also, if you do need to do formula, then choosing a formula that's not laced with emulsifiers, that's not heavily processed, that's using A2 type milk from our cows. So it's much easier to digest and it's the more natural, and it's the actual natural occurring milk in our cows that we have that hasn't been modified. Using milk from grass-fed cows, things like that, where making sure that the formula we give our baby is just not laced with ultra processed ingredients and bad quality ingredients. Other things we can do is also making sure that our kids are not stressed out, supporting them, nurturing them as much as we can. And things happen in the home, but constant stress can be a huge microbiome disruptor. So, trying to really create a home environment that is nurturing and supportive to our children, they just need a lot of love and lots of hugs and lots of understanding of what it means to be a baby, what it means to be a toddler, where they're growing up and they have lots of needs and they don't understand the world very well yet. So making sure they're really supported in this moment in time, it's great. Working with them on good breathing techniques so that we can stimulate the vagus nerve, which is that superhighway which connects our gut and our brain. It is such an important cranial nerve that we really need to learn how to nurture and how to help thrive, how to make sure that it's not really disrupted and it's not being stressed out so that this highway of communication between the gut and the brain is not disrupted and that everything is flowing beautifully. Things like making sure they're being hydrated with really good quality water. And if you're filtering your water, adding back in minerals to make sure we're not really flushing out our system. Making sure they're sleeping well. And this is something I'm really super excited about talking about because I'm going to learn from sleep and child development specialist who helped me through navigating sleep with my son, which was really rough for 2 years. And I'm actually going to be a certified sleep and child development specialist this summer after taking the course. And I'm really excited. So we're going to be talking a lot about sleeping in the future and how we can support our children's sleep. But not getting enough sleep is very disruptive to the gut. Actually, just 48 hours of not getting good quality sleep, not getting the enough hours that we actually need can be very disruptive to the gut. And it takes 7 days to restore that damage that's been done to the gut during that time. So think about that. If you have a child who's constantly waking and not being able to sleep well, how much damage to the gut can be done there? And I know sleep is rough because sometimes it's really hard to support our children through their sleep issues, but it's absolutely possible and it should be first of mind if you can deal with whatever is happening to help support that sleep because of how important it is to the gut microbiome health. Another thing is making sure they're getting enough exercise, they're really being an active kid, so they're not on the TV all day just watching on the couch, being a couch potato, because that can also be very disruptive to the gut microbiome. And what's really cool about this, the fact that hydration, sleep, and exercise and vagus nerve health supports our gut microbiome, is that it takes the pressure off for parents who have extreme picky eaters, right? Because I know what it means to work with an extreme picky eater to diversify their diet. That's really hard because of their tendencies to not to want to eat healthy, nutritious food. So I understand that. So that can take the pressure off a little bit so you can focus on those other areas. And then other areas that really are great for microbiome development and our health and our mitochondrial health is being out in the sun, making sure we're exposed to the sun as much as we can, really going out with our children in the morning after sunrise, within hopefully like 90 minutes of waking. If you can go out and really take advantage of that red and infrared light to get your circadian rhythm working properly for the day, to that exposure to sun at that time can do wonders for our circadian rhythm. And it is so important for our gut health and our health in general, our mitochondrial health. So taking your baby or your child for a walk right after waking, as close to it as you possibly can. And it doesn't have to be 30 minutes. It could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That's already beneficial. Also exposing the babies to the sun at sunrise, right? So there is a lot of red and infrared light there as well. We talk a lot about red light therapy and how beneficial it can be to children. And I agree with that 100%. But red light therapy is trying to mimic the sun, really, is what it's doing. And it's just never going to be as good as the sun itself. So taking advantage of not having to buy a big device. And don't get me wrong, I have one. They're incredible. There is a time and place to use them, especially if you live in the northern hemisphere and you don't have access to the sun every single day because it's cloudy, it's winter, it's cold and it's hard or it's rainy. It's great to have it. But if we can take advantage of the sun every day as much as you can, that's the best way to go. Making sure that they're getting exposed to the good UVB light, which really stimulates our gut health and helps us create POMC. There's so many different things we can talk about here. And I've been learning about sun from Dr. Alexis Cohen, and she's incredible. So I want to talk about this a lot more, but in the interest of time, I know you're a busy parent, we're just going to do the basics, but exposing their belly, so making sure their belly is uncovered for just a few minutes as they're exposed to the UVB sun, which is so crucial to our health. That's like during the midday sun, so around like from probably maybe like 11:30 to 2:30ish. That's really where you want them to be exposed to it, as if you possibly can. That could do so much to balance the gut microbiome for a child. It's incredible. Um, so I think that's one of the missing pieces that we're not talking about enough. And I'm hoping that this conversation will start to happen with more providers and more parents, because we need to bring this information to everybody. But that's another thing that's really important, making sure that they're getting enough protein and good foods in their diet that are whole food based. We want to make sure that our children are eating balanced meals with macronutrients. So things like protein, fat, and good carbs that really need to support their development. Oftentimes we focus on the snack foods, and I catch myself doing that as well, making sure we have enough snack foods, but really it's important to plan for those big meals and the healthy meals of the day to really help all children get the right nutrients that they need. Another thing that Dr. Song talks about in terms of microbiome health is nutrition, of course, and the 3 F's, she calls them. So things that really nourish the microbiome. And those are fermented foods, phytonutrients, even though that starts with a PH, but that's okay. Sounds like an F, and fiber. So our kids are not getting enough fiber. The daily recommendation is really 25 gram, which is still kind of a low recommendation, and we're typically not near there. And that's really important to support the probiotic formation in our gut, because these are the prebiotics which we need to make it happen. So we need fiber, we need phytonutrients, so lots of colorful veggies and fruits. These are all really important phytonutrients. And we need fermented foods, and fermented foods with salt, right? Not really vinegar, because vinegar can be disruptive, but really good fermented foods. So what's really cool about the book is that you can actually find some cool recipes for fermenting things like fruits and making fermented popsicles from that fruit, and making fermented lemonade drink, which I think is more palatable for kids versus like your typical sauerkraut. I mean, I myself, I'm Polish, so I love sauerkraut, but I don't remember what age I started eating it, honestly. But there's so many more things we can eat that are actual fermented foods that are delicious and just really feed the good bacteria in our microbiome. So these are some basic things that we can do. There's also things that we need to minimize. We talked about this briefly, things like antibiotics, processed foods, glyphosate as much as we can. So try and buy organic as much as we possibly can. Environmental toxins and EMF exposure. And so many more things that can be disruptive to the microbiome. But I'm going to record a separate episode on that as well down the line, just because there's so much to cover here. But this is really what I wanted to cover today, just like the introduction to the gut-brain connection and microbiome health, and intro to our kids' health in general, because there's so much to talk about. But just understanding the importance of a balanced gut microbiome, I think it's really the foundation that we need to focus on to help our kids be healthy, happy, and resilient, and to take on today's toxic load like little champions. So that's it for today. I hope you found our exploration of the gut-brain connection enlightening. I really hope that it's getting you thinking about the health of your child and what are some ways you can support them no matter what journey they're on right now, no matter if they already have been diagnosed with a chronic disease, if they're showing some symptoms of a chronic disease, if they're showing really any discomfort in any way. What I'm learning and what science is really showing us is that it's all stemming from the gut. So let's help our children thrive. Let's restore their microbiome health and let's do it together. Because having a supportive community, I think it's really important to be able to bounce ideas and bounce questions of each other. So if you have any questions, if you have any feedback for me, find me on Instagram at lena.livin'sky. Send me a message on DM and I'll be happy to chat with you about this because I'm really, really passionate about this topic. So join us next time as we dive into another exciting topic in the world of children's health and wellness. And until then, take care and stay curious. Thank you so much for tuning in today and being a part of the Livin'Sky community. I hope you learned something new and inspiring that you can apply in your life right away. If you have a minute, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us grow and for other parents like you to find us. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Sending you and your family lots of love. I'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Livin'Sky Podcast. If this episode resonated, please leave a quick 5-star review or share it with another parent who'd love it too. It really helps more families find the support that they need. And don't forget to join my newsletter at lenalivinsky.com for more tips and free guides. Sending a little sunshine to your kitchen today. See you next time.